Today's sponsor is Dykeman-Young Gallery and Vintage Emporium, located at 100 East 2nd Street in Jamestown, New York. On today's episode, I'm happy to welcome Dennis Drew, the general manager of WRFA. You might also know him from the 10,000 Maniacs. He's here to discuss with us a little bit about the 10th anniversary of WRFA being on the air. It's actually the only locally owned and operated radio station in Jamestown. Again, thank you for coming on.
Oh yeah, it's great to be here.
You've been with the WRFA from the beginning, right?
Absolutely. I started WRFA. Actually, I was walking down 3rd Street one day, and I bumped into Ed Tomasini. Mm-hmm. If you know Ed, everybody knows Ed a little bit. And he said, hey, the FCC just opened a window for low-power radio. It's about 12 years ago. And he said maybe the Arts Council would be interested in having a radio station. So I went upstairs and saw Philip Morris, who was the director of the Arts Council at the time, and he said, sounds interesting. So we applied for a station. It took a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And then we were granted a license, and we started raising money. We had some help from the Sheldon Foundation. We threw a party and made some money, and we put the station on the air 10 years ago. Right now, our first day was September 13th, 2004.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it was totally random that you just kind of
It was pretty random. You know, I had been in radio before. Ed and I started a radio station at Jamestown Community College in 1978. And I had been a radio disc jockey, and then went off with the band and did all the musical stuff. But I always loved radio. And I had been interested in getting back into something like that. And yeah, the opportunity just popped up in my face one day, and there you go.
Sometimes that's how it happens.
That is how it's happened.
That's the fun stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, just random.
Yeah, everything worked that way.
What kind of steps have you taken over the years to kind of improve programming and the way you do things?
Yeah, well, it's a multifaceted business. You've always got to pay attention to fundraising. But number one, you got to get good people. We came up with a basic plan to be a educational, cultural radio station. And then I found Steve Schulman, who was retired from WJTN. Mm-hmm. He was the news director and program director up there. So he was a professional radio guy. And he was retired, and he wanted to get back into something. It was, really serendipitous. And he came on, and he really lent an air of professionalism. He came on really early on. So he helped us build the programming, and we just talked about it, and we said, there's a really big public station in Buffalo, so when they're talking, we'll play music, and when they play music, we'll talk. So people always have a choice. It morphed into something that is mainly we're doing educational programming during the day and music in the afternoon and evening, but we started out that way, and he was a tremendous help. And along the way, we could bought another computer so that he could sit around and surf the web. Thank God for the internet, because we could find so many free programs that people just wanted to give away. A lot of them were supported by other foundations, right. The MacArthur Foundation, the Ford Foundation, different universities, science programs. So we just gathered them up over a period of time, and Steve fashioned it into a regular schedule. I brought in my old record collection. I had an old friend at Warner Brothers who just would randomly send us a bunch of CDs every month or so, and then we encouraged local people to give us their CDs,
right.
Especially young bands, and that was one of the best things we ever did was the local rush hour every day at 5 o'clock. But we always tried to champion local music, local arts, local events.
Yeah, there's so much of that around here.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's developed over the years. What kind of changes have you seen over the years in Jamestown that has also kind of influenced what you chose to do?
Yeah, I tell you, there was a real burst of musical energy about 5 or 6 years ago, about in the middle of this run. there's less of it now. There are less bands making CDs because maybe they don't make CDs anymore. Maybe it's all just on somebody's Facebook page and I don't know how to find it. But there were a lot of bands that were making records. Chris Bell still does it, Smack Dab, The Audience. But there were a few other ones. Even some of the sort of cover rock bands were making their own CDs. So it was neat. But that seems to have slowed down a little bit. But there's still a great scene at Brazil, and I remember when Labyrinth actually existed, and he's been closed too long.
Yeah.
And they would do shows there, and then Mojo's would do shows. So it was always a good art scene, and we always had an abundance of musicians and things to pull from. Big Leg Emma was going strong and making records all the time, and Steve Johnson. So some of that has slowed down as people have gotten 10 years older. But we really lived right through, I think, one of the peaks in Jamestown's musical history, the first part of this century. There was a lot of great stuff going on, and most of it was on WRFA.
Yeah. I'm glad you can be proud of that. Have you ever said anything kind of embarrassing online? Or on air? Online. For me, it's online.
Yeah. Well, we've made some mistakes for sure. Always not. I basically am a foul-mouthed sailor, having driven around in a van with a bunch of men for 30 years. So some of that has slipped, but most of the stuff we do now is recorded, so we can eliminate any gaffes, as it were. I've done big introductions of thanking all my sponsors and forgetting the main sponsor. I just did that with Schultz the other day. This big lengthy thing and then forgot to mention their name. It was just so pointless. So that stuff's happened. And, you misspeak, you pronounce people's names wrong. That's always good.
Yeah. Anybody ever get really offended by that, or they just kind of like, oh, it happens?
No, sometimes you don't notice it until the next guy pronounces it right. And you go, wait a minute.
And you're listening back, and you're like,
oh, yeah. So
yeah, that's what's nice about what I do is because I can crop things. I can even fix it. I've said the names wrong, and I've fixed it in post.
Yeah.
So that the viewers get it correct, and they don't. It makes me look better.
But we teach. I teach a radio class at the high school, and the kids really hesitate around names when they're trying to read names. And I just tell them, just sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I remember in 1984, the Olympics, we boycotted them. Was it 80? The Olympics in Russia, we boycotted them. But we still got all the scores of the Olympics, all the results over at the old ticker, the old AP machine. And I was a disc jockey at the time, and we'd have to do the sports. And I couldn't pronounce any of those names. Valery Bortsov, which I think really was his name. But I just took to making them up, and just doing the best I could and acting like I had a Russian accent, and nobody complained.
Right.
I always tell the kids, at least sound like you know what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, just sound like it. That's at least you have a career in politics.
All right. So this weekend I didn't even get a chance to look at all, but there's a concert with 10,000 Maniacs. There's Rolling Hills
Radio.
And then Jason Sample's going to be talking with someone, and I can't remember who.
Community Matters. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Jason's been a tremendous asset to the station.
Yes.
And his news reporting every day, the way he's coordinated volunteers, the way he gets out into the community, he really helped professionalize the station. And a lot of the growth we've what we had over the last 3 years or so has really been due to his efforts. He does a great job. And he's going to host Community Matters. It's a show he does every week. Usually has one or two guests. We're going to make it a roundtable, an economic development roundtable, sort of the last 10 years, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what's happened. The next 10 years, what can we do? What should happen? What's practical? We're going to do that with John Slenker from the New York State Department of Labor. We'll have Pete Lombardi from the Jamestown Renaissance Corporation, Jennifer Gibson from Northwest Savings Bank. We'll have Dan Hamister, who is part of the group that's putting in the DoubleTree and bought the old Holiday Inn and is going to turn it into the DoubleTree. They own hotels all over the country.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what his take is on how we stack up to the rest of the country. And we'll have Kevin Kearns, who is Vice President in charge of Engagement and Economic Development out at Fredonia State University. So we'll have a diverse group. Jason will run that roundtable, and that'll be aired at 3 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday the 13th as part of our live stream, all of which will be eventually be available online as podcasts. So, no, that'll be at 4 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, I'm going to start with some interviews. I've got Tom Benson from the National Comedy Center. I have Journey Gunderson, Kevin Sandvidge, the IDA, Mayor Sam Teresi, who I just was interviewing a little while ago, and then we'll do Community Matters at 4 o'clock. I misspoke earlier. So we've got a big day on Saturday.
You know, we always put the website and event page in the description, and you know, everybody can double check everything and make sure they know exactly when times stuff is airing. After
Community Matters, we're going to do Rolling Hills Radio. Ken Hardley's the host of that. We'll have Michelle Fambro, that's a name I've mispronounced a few times, along with John Latini. That's a wonderful Roots Americana radio program that we do. That'll be live, streaming live. And then some other stuff mixed in there, and a long interview with Len Berry from the Reginald Ney Center for the Arts going over the whole season. Then into the Maniacs. We're going to do an evening with 10,000 Maniacs, so we're going to do 2 sets. We'll do a quieter set, you know, with some of our real folk music and some of our pop hits. Then we'll take a break and come back. We got a horn section with us. John Lombardo is back to play with us. Then we'll tear it up in the second half of the show. So should be a lot of fun. It's a big night. We're really excited.
Cool. Well, tickets are available online at the Reg Lene.
RegLene.com.
And like I said, we'll put the WRFA-LP.com in the description, and you can check all the times and prices and whatnot down there. I'm definitely going to try to make it out if I'm not working on something.
There's a lot of $10 tickets.
Yep.
There are $25 tickets that are sort of in the main front section, but a lot of $10 tickets even on the floor, and there's not a bad seat in the house.
Right. All right. Well, I hope we see you there. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.